As soon as she walked in, it was like a light bulb went off and the sun was on her. At 74, Richard Gere, the man who once captivated millions in Pretty Woman and American Gigolo, didn't speak about a role, a film, or an achievement. He spoke only about a woman. A simple confession that made the world stop for a moment. I didn't get divorced because they were wrong. I got divorced because I wasn't good enough to hold on. A man who had been married 3 times, once hailed as the most charming gentleman in Hollywood, had finally come to understand that love isn't about finding the right person, but about becoming the right person at the right time. He had once loved the most beautiful women on the planet, married one of the world's top supermodels, was the darling of both cinema and the media. But it wasn't until he was nearly 70 that he found a relationship he didn't have to cling to, a love that didn't require performance, and a woman who didn't come to change him, but to stay. And Richard Gere said, "She is the true love of his life. This is not just the romantic journey of a movie star, it's the journey of a man, from fame to solitude, from insecurity to serenity, from control to understanding, a journey to learn how to love, not by instinct, but by growth." Before becoming a romantic icon of the silver screen, Richard Gere was a lanky young man from Pennsylvania, playing the trumpet, composing music for school plays, and studying philosophy at the University of Massachusetts. But then he left it all behind to pursue theater, where he could be someone else, live a different life, and perhaps, from very early on, Richard Gere became accustomed to playing the charming man, not just on screen, but in real life too. With a disarmingly attractive appearance and a mysterious, quiet demeanor, he was never short of women. But just like how he always seemed to slip through definitions, Richard's early relationships came and went quickly, intense enough to be intoxicating, but never lasting long enough to hold on. From Carol Mallory, the fiery model who once described him as a jewel shooting across the sky, to Dawn Steele, an editor at Penthouse who would later become the first female head of a major film studio in the U.S. From Penelope Milford, his Days of Heaven co-star who stayed with him throughout the 70s, to the brief but deeply impactful romance with Sylvia Martins, the woman who took him to Nepal, introduced him to Tibetan lamas, and opened the door to meditation and Buddhism. They were beautiful, intelligent, daring women. But for Richard Gere at the time, love was just a fleeting chapter in the journey of self-discovery. He was on the rise, from looking for Mr. Goodbar, Days of Heaven, to American Gigolo, but at the same time, falling into a space where no one had ever taught him how to make a woman stay. The whispers at parties, the paparazzi flashbulbs, the lonely nights in hotel rooms after shooting, they all seemed to blend together, painting a Richard Gere who shined on the outside but felt hollow within. Perhaps that's why he never truly intended to settle down. The women came and went and kept going, because even he didn't yet know what he needed. Not deep enough to keep, not safe enough to trust. All he knew was this: he was living fast and nowhere near ready to stop. In 1988, at a BBQ party hosted by photographer Herb Ritz in Beverly Hills, Richard Gere, then 39 years old, met Cindy Crawford, a 22-year-old woman fresh off the covers of the world's top fashion magazines. They came from 2 different worlds. He was the actor once dubbed the sexiest man alive, while she was the rising star of a fashion industry on the brink of exploding. And then they fell in love, fast, deeply, and unexpectedly. Not long after they moved in together in New York, the world was dazzled. A couple too beautiful, too famous. Richard Gere, the cool, elegant gentleman. Cindy Crawford, the ultimate American beauty. They were everywhere. Red carpets, ads, magazine covers, becoming the iconic couple of the 1990s. But behind the spotlight were 2 people moving at very different rhythms. Cindy was still figuring herself out, a young woman who had grown up too fast in a dazzling world, still unsure of where the line was between her real self and the public image. She was running from photo shoot to promotion, trying to maintain her figure, please those who wanted to turn her into a living brand. Meanwhile, Richard, after 2 decades as Hollywood's dream man, had begun to tire of the crowds. He sought peace, spent time meditating, engaging in humanitarian work, and retreating into quiet spaces away from cameras. They got married in a very quiet moment, a spontaneous ceremony in Las Vegas in 1991 with silver foil rings, no guests, no media, just two people trying to hold on to something beautiful that was already starting to slip away. But marriage isn't a cure for distance. When Richard meditated, Cindy boarded planes. When he sat still in silence, she kept moving, trying to become the woman he needed. She once said, "I tried to become the woman he needed, and then I lost myself." There was no scandal, no betrayal, just a growing silence and two people living like roommates. Schedules no longer aligned, emotions no longer meeting. In 1990, they quietly divorced. No lawsuits, no bad words. The media didn't know what to write, except a lingering question mark. Why did the perfect couple break up? Nearly 3 decades later, Richard finally said one thing, brief, but enough. "I loved a woman who didn't yet know who she was. And I thought love could help her find stability. But that was an unfair expectation. No one was wrong. They just didn't meet at the right time in the journey of their lives. One was still flying. The other had already landed." After his divorce from Cindy Crawford, Richard Gere stepped away from loud romances. No longer did he appear on magazine covers with young supermodels. Instead, he retreated quietly, meditating, traveling across Asia, studying Tibetan Buddhism, and taking on deeper, slower film roles. And then, as a gentle transition after emotional turbulence, he met Gere Lowell, an actress once known as a Bond girl in License to Kill, a beautiful, seasoned, calm woman. No glitz, no frenzy. Gere appeared as a peaceful haven, which Richard then mistook for a final destination. They began dating in 1995, lived quietly together, and in 2000, their son, Homer James Jigme Gere, was born. It was the first time Richard became a father, at the age of 51. In 2002, they married in a private ceremony. No paparazzi, no red carpet, no media buzz, just a small family choosing to live in New York, far from the spotlight, where Gere spent most of her time being a mother. And Richard grew vegetables, read books, made selective films, and continued his humanitarian work. Yet sometimes, stability is just an illusion created by parallel patience. Beneath that calm exterior, two people were slowly drifting out of each other's orbit. Richard was profoundly introverted. He would spend hours meditating, immersed in retreats in Tibet or Nepal, fascinated by philosophies of detachment and stillness. Meanwhile, Gere, though no longer often in front of the camera, still needed connection, movement, and social space to feel alive. As time went on, they were seen less and less together. At ceremonies, at film events, one would go, the other absent. Schedules no longer aligned. No one said it aloud, but silence had begun to speak. In 2013, Gere Lowell officially filed for divorce. After 11 years of marriage and 18 years together, the stated reason was irreconcilable differences, but deeper truths, as revealed by those close to them, pointed to Gere feeling shut out from her husband's world. She lived in a home without holding the key to its spirit. Meanwhile, Richard still believed silence is a sign of peace. Only when things began to break did he realize, when silence lasts too long, it's no longer peace. It's a signal, and I didn't hear it. The divorce dragged on for 3 years, not because of emotional conflicts, but financial ones. Assets worth over $45 million plus real estate in several places led to multiple court proceedings. But amid the tension, they did one thing right. They agreed to share custody of their son, Homer, a boy described as sensitive, calm, much like his father. Richard said nothing after the divorce, nor did Gere. All that remained was a quiet, deep sense of something broken. No one betrayed the other. No one went astray. It was simply that. Two people were too honest with their own nature, and at some point, they could no longer touch. After Gere Lowell, Richard Gere all but vanished from the media. No award shows, no red carpet photos, no interviews. People assumed he had chosen to live the rest of his life in stillness, as a father, a meditator, a contemplative soul. But then, just when he stopped searching, true love arrived. In 2014, while divorce proceedings with Gere Lowell were still unresolved, Richard Gere unexpectedly appeared beside a new face, Padma Lakshmi, model, author, and host of Top Chef. It was a relationship that stirred curiosity in the media, but never made headlines. No hand-in-hand photos, no interviews confirming a romance. Just scattered rumors that Richard and Padma met at a charity event, talked for hours backstage, and were occasionally spotted having dinner together. At that time, both carried their own scars. Richard was in the process of ending an 18-year marriage. Padma had just emerged from heartbreak after parting ways with billionaire Ted Forstman, the spiritual father of her young daughter. They found in each other more of a weary understanding than a bolt of passion. It was said that during those brief months, Richard found in Padma a quiet joy, long conversations, simple dinners, and no need to play a role. But at the same time, both understood they were standing at very different points in life. Richard craved stillness, meditation, peace. Padma, famous, vibrant, and drawn to the energy of television and international events. They broke up after about 6 months, with a gentle, regret-free ending. No fights, no scandal. A close source simply put it, they decided it would be better to stay friends because their lives were too busy in different directions. If anything lingered from this short relationship, it was the image of a Richard Gere who had begun to slow down, no longer loving out of loneliness, no longer seeking to fill a void. He was learning to accept that harmony cannot be forced, and that sometimes love alone is not enough to make someone stay. And perhaps from that very place, the urge to search quietly faded. Richard Gere began to let go of all expectations, not seeking love, not waiting for a miracle. It was in that exact moment that the final person stepped into his life, without noise, without pressure, without needing to be held on to. Alejandra Silva. People often say, when you stop searching for love, love finds you. Richard Gere, after 3 marriages, a string of magnetic but short-lived relationships, and years spent wandering between monasteries and film sets, finally sat still. No chasing, no effort to prove anything. And it was in that exact moment that Alejandra Silva entered his life, not as dazzling as Cindy Crawford, not as seasoned on stage as Carrie Lowell. Alejandra Silva, a Spanish woman with calm eyes, soft blonde hair, and the sensitive heart of a social activist, never thought she'd fall in love again. She had just gone through a divorce, was raising her child alone, and leading the Raise Foundation to combat homelessness in Madrid. She had slept on the streets to understand the pain of those without shelter, and once openly shared, "I don't do charity work to be seen. I do it because if I can't give my whole self to it, I'd rather not do it at all." In 2014, at a hotel owned by her family in Positano, Italy, they met again. At the time, Gere was quietly stepping out of his second marriage. She too was buried in divorce papers, weary, but when they looked at each other, they didn't see the past. They saw a peaceful version of the future they could build together. Richard Gere took the first step, quietly, gently. He sent flowers every day, wrote short songs, penned handwritten letters, not to conquer her, but as a whisper. "I'm ready to stay if you need someone beside you." Alejandra initially declined. She was wary of the 33-year age gap. She knew he was a global star. She didn't want to be the next woman of Richard Gere, but he didn't give up. He didn't persuade. He waited. He was simply there, quiet, patient, enough for her to see this wasn't another romance. This was a home. They married in April 2018, in an intimate Buddhist ceremony in New York. Alejandra converted beforehand, not because Gere asked, but because she found herself in the very things he believed in. She said, "I didn't ignore the age difference, but when karmic energy between two people is strong enough, differences become secondary." And she later told, "Hola." Meeting Richard Gere felt like someone reaching out, pulling me out of the dark and showing me the way. I was lost. He was the light. After the wedding, they moved into a peaceful estate in Pound Ridge, the same place Gere had lived with Carrie Lowell. But this time, he didn't build walls. They left the doors open. They lived together like companions. No control, no expectations, no roles to perform. In 2019, they welcomed their first son, Alexander. In 2020, their second child was born. The name kept private, but not the joy. On Instagram, Alejandra often shared glimpses of family walks, meditation sessions, or their two children reaching out to catch the autumn sun. Richard Gere once said of his wife, "She's the funniest, smartest, most sensitive, brave woman who knows what she wants. I don't need her to be anyone else, and I don't need to play the perfect husband. We live close, without needing to explain." Alejandra calls him the kindest man I've ever met. He's not just a thoughtful partner, writing music for her each morning, still sending flowers even after marriage, but also a peaceful father, holding his children as they fall asleep, always putting family first. People often ask, how do you keep love alive? The answer, Richard Gere doesn't hold on. Alejandra doesn't hold on. They walk side by side without control. They touch each other with understanding, not with expectation. They respect their differences, but don't force themselves to become the same. One is deeply introverted, drawn to silence and meditation. The other is outwardly engaged, fighting for human rights and the homeless. And they met, not because they were alike, but because they shared the same depth of rhythm in their hearts. This is not the passion of youth. This is the love of two people who have once broken, but never lost their capacity to love. A man who had divorced 3 times, a woman who had walked through the wreckage of marriage. And in the end, both understood, love isn't about holding on to someone. It's about never making them feel they have to try to stay. In a rare moment when he spoke about his wife, Richard once said, "She is the most generous woman I've ever known, with others and with me." A simple sentence, yet enough to explain why. He never had to look any further. Some relationships are built on passion. Some are held together by commitment. And then there are relationships, like that of Richard Gere and Alejandra Silva, that form not out of lack, not to fill a void, but because both people were already whole. Neither came in with the mindset of searching. Neither hoped the other would fix them, complete them, or become someone they had idealized. She didn't need Richard to be romantic, like in the movies, and Richard didn't need her to resemble any woman he had known before. They met, with nothing left to prove and no one left to hold on to. No media contracts, no pressure to appear in public, no need to showcase wedding photos, just short songs Richard wrote each morning, handwritten letters Alejandra kept, peaceful dinners where the laughter of their children drowned out the noise of everyday life. People often say, if you want to keep someone, never let them feel like they have to try so hard to stay. And maybe Richard Gere took many years to understand that. While Alejandra, after years of tendon-tearing pain from a divorce, also came to realize, love isn't the thing that makes you lose yourself. The right kind of love is the one where you get to be your truest self. They don't try to control each other. No need to track schedules, no need to justify feelings. They just show up, they are present, and they live together with complete understanding. Like two people who have walked through all the pain and finally found a place quiet enough to let something bloom. Richard Gere was once a face that lit up every screen. Now, he is a man living in a house with no reporters waiting at the gate. At 74, he no longer appears regularly in the press, no longer walks red carpets, or answers the same recycled interview questions. People don't know what film he's working on, because maybe he isn't. Or if he is, it's likely a quiet, independent project, one that doesn't need the box office or the Oscars. Instead of camera lenses, he now spends his time with Alejandra and their 2 young sons at a farmhouse in Pound Ridge, where the grass grows past the knees and morning fog cloaks the hills. A day in his life looks like this: making tea or coffee for his wife, not calling an assistant, walking the dog along the stone path behind the house, no paparazzi, gardening, reading Buddhist texts, playing piano for the kids in the evening, and sometimes driving them to school in an old SUV. No bodyguards. There are no more scenes to shoot. Each day is real. He still maintains close ties with humanitarian organizations, especially those focused on Tibet, human rights, and homelessness. But now, he does it all in silence. No speeches, no live streams, no awards. Alejandra, his wife, continues to run the Raise Foundation in Spain. They don't do charity to be applauded. They do it because it's the right thing. And with their family, every moment is kept private. A photo of a walk through the autumn woods. A Christmas snapshot captioned simply, "From our home to yours. Wishing you peace." Gere once said, I don't need to be in Hollywood to know I still exist. Perhaps that's why he never formally announced his retirement. He just chose to step back, quietly, completely. No more acting, no more roles, just living in the gentlest way. Richard Gere was once known for playing charming, magnetic men. But now, he plays only one role, and it may be the most important of his life: being a father, being a husband, and being a peaceful man. Which love story from Richard Gere's life stays with you the most? Was it the dazzling marriage with Cindy Crawford, the long silence with Carrie Lowell, or the quiet but radiant life with Alejandra Silva? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever believed that love always arrives late, leave a comment, "Yes, I think so," to let us know that you too believe in Richard Gere's love story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories about the life journeys of your favorite stars.